Back in the 90s, consoles didn't tend to release worldwide at quite the same time. There was often a full year's gap, in fact. This can make judging an older console's launch library a mite more complicated. People often tend to start with the US library, which, given that year's head start, has quite a bit more to work with than what you might be able to consider the true launch, the Japanese launch. Where in America, launch PS1 owners were served such classics as Rayman, Air Combat, and Battle Arena Toshinden. The Japanese launch in 1994 was a sight to behold, if you loved Mahjong and arcade ports. Don't get me wrong, I love Ridge Racer, but there was not a single title among the PlayStation's launch library you could call a true exclusive that wasn't Mahjong. Okay, I'm sorry. I started recording Mahjong Station Mahjong for this bit, and this game doesn't feel real. What the fuck is this? Have you ever wanted Mahjong, but a single match is like 1 hour of these people screaming back and forth? Oh my god. None, that is, except Crime Crackers. Crime Crackers occupies a very curious slot in history. The first true PlayStation exclusive, a game that almost had to carry the entire weight of this yet unproven new hardware on its shoulders for at least a few months. A game in a relatively untapped niche, especially at the time and especially on console, the dungeon crawling FPS RPG. Yeah, before Final Fantasy, before Persona, before Suikoden, and before even Kingsfield, the PS1 launched with one very, very odd little RPG to call its own. It's the debut work of Mediavision, and in being so is the start of a years-long journey of these guys just not really getting the respect they deserve. A bit like Wild Arms a few years ahead of it, Crime Crackers was met with a pretty muted reception. It didn't score too well in Famitsu, only managing a meager 23 out of 40, and import magazines tore the living hell out of it. It's not impossible to see why, I'll admit. The game is right off the bat very simple, Wolfenstein 3D-esque in construction even. If there's one thing that doomed Crime Crackers in the public eye, it was releasing a year after Doom. The game operates on a single faux 3D plane, which is understandably pretty unexciting for a gaming populace who'd now been exposed to the concept of FPS games with real stairs. You have to keep in mind, though, this game was the first project of a team who not only hadn't made an FPS before, but who hadn't even released a game yet, period. Just about the only person on staff with any significant prior experience in games was designer Akifumi Kaneko. Given the fresh faces on staff, working in a relatively undeveloped space of games, working on newly released hardware that nobody quite understood that well yet, even among more experienced companies, it's absolutely impressive that Crime Crackers works at all. And of course, least talked about in any of those import reviews is its surprisingly heartfelt and engaging story. Needless to say, I think it's a game that deserves more respect than it's gotten. So that's why we're going to be looking at it today. Grab your bullet charge, polish up your sword, and drink your life milk. It's time for us to go crack some crime. Oh yeah, I only noticed about halfway into the playthrough that OBS had offset all my footage over to the right. So, sorry if that ends up being distracting. Don't really have the energy to correct it. Crime Crackers' opening makes its age and some of the core design DNA behind it pretty apparent. These kinds of long text-only intros were a very common way to open earlier Japanese PC games. Some of what it sets up is decently important. In short, it runs through the Great Galactic War waged between the large planets Atron and Giva. So called the Great War because it wrapped up all the surrounding planets into it for around 10 years. Atron ended up emerging the victor, and over the 20 years since, Givon's remaining forces have sailed the stars as ruthless pirates, leading to the now dominant Atron Galactic Union's Galaxy Guard, legalizing bounty hunting and creating the Crime Crackers. The particular heroes of our story are a crew captained by Amelia Alcanet, a young but steadfast and confident crime cracker searching the galaxy for her missing brother. Accompanying her on her adventures are Doran, a large space lizard guy with a cannon who's always watching her back, and Lisa, a noble and honorable samurai fox girl from the reclusive planet Fox. They're also accompanied by their handy info droid Log and his lover? An excitable cyber elf, a digital being capable of fully sentient thought, Potpourri Vamp. Can't forget about their cool old ship pilot chicken guy, Parrot. Though he's over 100 years old, nobody knows his exact age. Okay, some of the details shared in the game's manual about our guys is pretty cute. And the art's pretty sick. You can definitely tell from this alone that whoever created these characters really cared about them. And that definitely transfers into the game itself, with our little opening scene showing them all tired after seemingly endless days of work, cracking crime. The gang decides to go stop by a local station for some R&R when... ah boy, more trouble. Guess the life of a crime cracker gives no breaks. But don't worry, our girls and Doran won't crack under the pressure. Let's talk a bit about gameplay. The easiest way to describe how Crime Crackers plays is a bit of an odd FPS RPG mix of Wolfenstein 3D and an older party-based dungeon crawler. We've got our three dudes, Amelia, Lisa, and Doran. They've all got their own gear and stats. Amelia's generally well-rounded. She's got a simple burst fire and pretty good defense. Doran's got a slower, heavier power shot. It fires slower but hits harder. But each shot eats twice as much ammo. Alright, ammo. You've got a fixed cap. You can restore it with bullet charges and raise it by 50 with bullet packs. Third in our playable trio is Lisa. Lisa's special. Lisa's actually a bit broken, even. Being a samurai, she fights honorably, with the blade. That means her attacks have low range, but they also have the highest damage, expend no ammo, and fire off as fast as you can mash square. You can guess how broken this ends up making her. And she only gets more and more busted as the game goes on. I love Lisa. The thing some people might notice starting the game up, though, is how attacking, works. When not in attack mode, you move pretty normally. Pretty well, even, given the game's age. It maintains a pretty steady frame rate, and movement inputs are pretty responsive. You move as expected with the D-pad, and strafe as you expect with the shoulder buttons. It's a damn sight more responsive than Kingsfield, that's for sure. But things change a bit when you want to attack. You press square, you enter firing mode. In firing mode, you can't move. The D-pad switches to control your crosshair, like GoldenEye aiming. You can still strafe with the shoulder buttons, but your movement is more limited. You have to get used to swapping in and out, which, thankfully, is as quick as the press of a single button. In this case, X to exit back out to movement. It could be really annoying, but thankfully switching in and out isn't something you have to do so frequently or that feels so interruptive of anything that it sucks. It's fine. It works. You get a feel for it. Some other important combat-related actions are your specials, big screen clears that deal a ton of damage and have a fancy animation unique to each character. Each special uses up one of your Doritos up here, so be careful not to waste them all. And, most critically, defense! If you press in both shoulder buttons at the same time, instead of strafing, you'll enter defense mode. In defense mode, you can't move or attack, but enemy attacks will barely hurt you, if they hurt you at all. This is absolutely critical to surviving combat, since a lot of fights push you into corners so tight you have no room to maneuver away. Like shifting in and out of combat mode, it works instantly, so it doesn't feel clunky or interruptive of anything. So far, this all sounds perfectly fine, right? Not particularly deep, but not overcomplicated. Simple in a way that has a charm to it. And yeah, I would say that's the case, largely. Combat in Crime Crackers isn't good, but it's not like agonizing, it's not painful. There's a simple appeal to blasting stuff, and while enemies can get a little bit tanky, you basically always have the tools to handle whatever the game throws at you. Helps that enemies have very fixed zones of movement. They might fire at you, they might try to charge and melee you, but as long as you remember the basics of CQC, it's all pretty manageable, beginning to end. Of course, that's talking about combat. Exploration is where... okay, I wasn't drawing that parallel to earlier Japanese PC dungeon crawlers for nothing. It goes beyond the bulky UI and claustrophobic viewport. Crime Crackers is, once again, cut up into various individual levels that are somewhere between a simple little Wolfenstein labyrinth and early Japanese PC dungeon crawler maze design. It starts off simple enough, but it quickly gets, well, the game ends with teleporter mazes. You do get an auto map pretty early, and you can get an accessory for Amelia that'll display the auto map mid-gameplay, so it's got a few relatively forward-thinking bits of quality of life for those unwilling to pick up a pen and paper. Unfortunately for you, the map is not very good, so it's not going to be too much help. It omits a lot of important details, so you still have to remember things like locked door placements and how elevators on different floors link up. There are also some decent rewards for exploration. Levels tend to have secrets tucked away, usually behind clearly telegraphed cracked walls you can blast through. There's no invisible walls or anything, the game never asks you to blindly guess at these. They're always very clearly visible and could very believably be found by a new player with zero familiarity with the maps, and the rewards are usually pretty invaluable, ranging from super powerful weapons to permanent stat upgrades, like life apples, milk, and meat, which boosts Amelia, Lisa, and Doran's max HP respectively, or energy charges that add another Dorito to your special charge. Neat! In the final level, you can even find the Masamune if you stumble into this random corner, which, as you might expect, does crazy damage and fully solidifies Lisa as kind of objectively the best character in the game. If not upgrades, you'll find useful accessories, like Lisa's gauntlet that, when equipped, boosts the range of her sword beams. Did I mention how broken Lisa is? You can also get colored gems, which serve as simple fodder for the shop. Oh right, the shop. Between every level, you get an opportunity to stop by the shop and upgrade your gear. The normal shop starts out a bit pricey, but you'll catch up with it soon enough. But through just a bit of exploration in one particular level, you can find the Black Market Pass, which gives you access to a second secret shop. Their prices are a little bit higher, but they also sell rarer items and gear with higher stats. The one wrinkle to this whole shop system is Cracker Rank, a system I'm still not quite sure how it works. The manual doesn't really explain it. After every level, you'll get some vague points tallied up, and once you hit certain thresholds, you gain Cracker Rank. You can't buy gear that's higher rank than you, so make sure to get that Cracker Rank up, however you do it. First time I played the game, I was stuck at rank S at the end and couldn't buy the best armor, but this time I hit it before the end, and I'm not really sure what I did differently at all. It feels pretty weird and unnecessary. Provided you're okay with how primitive this core gameplay is, the only real obstacle to enjoying the game is how wide, long, and slow things can get. Some of the later acts can take upwards of 40 minutes to an hour, which can get a mite exhausting, and since combat isn't too difficult, there's also not exactly too much of a dynamic to it all. You're kinda just trawling through long, boxy hallways and mashing square. It's a bit of a shame, because some later levels do have good ideas. The game's smart enough to preserve your sanity by not repeating level gimmicks too much, and it does try to have some breather levels rather than consisting solely of combat gauntlets. One of the earlier levels is a short story set piece for Amelia, and one of the longer late-game levels omits any form of combat in favor of providing a series of exploration-based puzzles. This is, unfortunately, also one of the worst levels in the game. One big positive thing I'll note about Crime Crackers is that it offers mid-level saves, unlimited times, anywhere you want. Unfortunately, this mechanic also seems to be a bit buggy, at least on emulators. I kept having Beetle PSX crash when I tried to use this, so don't feel bad about save stating. The game's kinda rough on emulators in general, honestly. I guess being the first PSX game ever means a lot of it is coded in weird ways even more accurate emulators aren't quite sure how to handle. Anyway, you're going to need save states here. because it ironically has the biggest potential to lock you into a nigh unavoidable death for reasons we will get into a bit later. If nothing else, there are big ideas on display in Crime Crackers. It's not just a half-hearted, mediocre launch game. They really shot for something here. Its only problems are execution. There are a lot of things about the game that could work better with a bit more time and experience. It's not bad, just unpolished. A lot of this is displayed in the game's presentation, which is a mixed bag. Now, the art and music for Crime Crackers is undeniably pretty stellar. The character designs and portraits were provided by Kokomai of the Circle Akai Kutsu Club, who previously did art for the Zack series spin-off Frey and Magical Adventure, and also some other games. They have this very distinctly moe early 90s sci-fi OVA style to them, and they really carry that Dojin soft PC game energy. Mechanical designs are similarly provided by fellow Akai Kutsu Club member Takeshi Ito and Tochi Oyama, unaffiliated. The game's strong art does a lot to prop up what would otherwise be a pretty drab and unimpressive hallway shooter. If there's one thing that's hard not to admire about Crime Crackers, it's the 2D art and texture work. Every character has a full, detailed portrait, with a variety of different expressions, all equipped with simple lip flaps that animate while they talk. Our main three have reaction faces for taking damage, and the other members of the crew will, kind of adorably, pop in on the main screen for scenes where they're accompanying the trio. Cutscenes themselves are a bit more limited in expression, typically rendered as small background windows. They try to fit a lot of different ones in here, but you are going to be staring at the cockpit of the Pink Dolphin for a pretty significant chunk of the game. I do think the choice to render story NPCs within levels as flat 2D PNGs rather than giving them full 3D models is a cute one, though. The 3D itself is probably the most mixed bag part of it all. I'll give it this, it looks good for 1994. It doesn't have the level of 3D depth that Doom's levels do, and the texture work is a bit repetitive, but it does have more color. Most every level has a unique tile set, so you're not literally staring at the same walls the entire game. Probably the most impressive thing about it is the 3D enemy models themselves. Don't get me wrong, they're not amazing, they're distinctly stubby and stiff, in that way that all early 3D PSX game models tend to be. But, well, they're better than Kingsfield. The game usually does an okay job hiding the limitations of their simple animations, and the models themselves are pretty clean and readable. A lot of it is owed to the game's texture work. They didn't know how to make great 3D shapes, but they did know how to texture around them to make something that looks like literally anything. Considering how much of the game you'll spend staring these guys in the face, it's probably for the best that they don't look horrifically ugly. If there is one thing that will cause some annoyance, well, two things, but while we're talking about the visuals, let's hit this one up. The game's draw distance is very, very low. I guess it had to be to optimize it for such new and unfamiliar hardware. It gives the game a weirdly eerie atmosphere that works for the levels that are supposed to be dark and gloomy, but since the entire game looks like that, it does end up contributing to navigation, being a fair bit difficult, among other things. It's really not helped by the lack of distinct landmarks and levels. That's unfortunately a bit of detail that the game really could have benefited from having. I mentioned the puzzle trial level. The third trial there is by far the roughest part of the game, and a lot of that has to do with a combination of the game's poor map, low draw distance, and lack of landmarks. You've got 15 minutes to destroy all 27 of these demon paintings, and both times I've done this level I got lost for way too long because the draw distance is so short and the environment is so samey that there was just one painting that escaped me until I finally stumbled into the one corner of the map I hadn't combed over yet. Considering they give you more than enough time to actually destroy them all, it's pretty frustrating when your one game over is purely due to the game's low visibility, making one kind of drawn-out gimmick section that extra bit more annoying. More than the visuals, though, I think what leaves an impression about Crime Crackers to people who are familiar with it at all is the music. Composed by Noriyuki Asakura of Tease Music, Crime Crackers was his second game, but odds are, if you've played a Tenchu or Way of the Samurai game, you've heard this guy's music before. Also recently did the music for Sekiro and Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. The music itself? Really, really good. High energy, early 90s electronic stuff. There's bits of 90s J-pop and some nice, more spooky, atmospheric themes. A real joy to listen to. One problem. It doesn't loop. With how long the levels are, you're going to be hearing these songs just play, just finish, end, and then restart over and over and over and over again, like 20 or 30 times. It adds to the monotony a bit. If there's one area their lack of technical expertise really screwed them on here, it was not figuring this bit out. I guess with all that out of the way, we can get into the real meat of Crime Crackers, the story. I'm gonna spoil it all. If you care, you can skip here if you don't want to hear it. Though I genuinely have no idea when or if ever this game will get a fan translation. Crime Crackers' story was written by Max Watanabe, and once again a member of Akai Kutsu Club, Kanemono Masato, which is an alias for Kokomai. Okay. The story of Crime Crackers starts off deceptively simple. After cracking some small-time criminals in the first level, the Crime Crackers get a call in for a job from a member of the Galaxy Guard, the GG, a man named Lapus, requesting their cooperation in launching a stealth strike on one of the most feared space pirates in the galaxy, Borgon, a man so fearsome and respected that the number of vessels at his command numbers in the thousands. With confidential intel about his current location, Lapus says they'd prefer to send in a small team of skilled crackers to grab him, rather than alert him with a full-scale assault. Sounds reasonable enough. After breaking through his fortress and defeating his loyal guardian, he comes along with surprisingly little fuss, and suspiciously little pushback from any of the pirates under his command. When the gang encounters one pirate who does take control of a space dock nearby in an attempt to free him from his capture, Borgon actively refuses his aid. Soon after, the crew reaches the final destination they were tasked to take Borgon to: prison. Without even a fair trial, he's been sentenced to the most remote, high-security prison in the galaxy, a massive, mechanized, and fortified planet, literally just called Prison. The reputation of Prison is so nasty that even the Crackers were shocked when they were ordered to just take him there immediately with no chance for a judge or jury. Upon arriving, the gang talks for a bit about this planet's history with the Union and with the war. During the war, it served as a frequent battleground for its natural resources, leaving it scarred and tattered. The Union's successful hold over it played a large role in their ultimate victory. Borgon waxes poetic about the irony of it all. Such a frequent and bloody battleground turned into a prison where those who lost the war are locked away, forced to face a lifetime of abuse and brutality until they draw their final breath. He thanks Amelia for treating him well on their trip here and disembarks of his own will. A surprisingly graceful exit for such a supposedly dastardly villain. Shortly after, the Crackers are enjoying some time off. Most of them, at least. Vamp asks what Amelia's up to and learns a bit about her history. When Amelia was young, her older brother, Kane Alcanet, inherited his father's spaceship, the Great Shark, and worked as a well-respected crime cracker. So well-respected, in fact, that 4 years ago he was brought in to work as part of the security fleet for the test launch of a new experimental warp drive system. It, didn't go well. All of the security ships were lost, including his. Amelia still believes he's out there somewhere, though. She's still looking. Every moment she gets, she continues her search. The level after this is the shortest and quietest in the game, a brief dive into Emilia's dream of chasing after her brother. It's neat, ambitious. It's also very funny because the engine's coded in such a way that they couldn't remove Doran or Lisa, so they're just there in her dream space, just kind of hanging out. It also has one of Emilia's most unintentionally funny lines in the game. "Don't leave me behind, Kane! I've grown up! I've solved so many cases! I've become a proper cracker!" It feels bad to laugh at a scene as emotional as this, but they don't waste the title, huh? For a while after this, the game dips into some more lighthearted episodic side adventures, like Doran rescuing a shipment of his favorite vegetable fungus, the Matango, which has been under attack en masse by evil Matango bandits, while Parrot gets a moment to nerd out over and help retrieve his favorite ancient historical crown, the Seven Wise Men's Grief, a crown said to be commissioned by a historical king after he felt intense shame and regret over ordering the deaths of the 7 wise men guiding him for, just kind of cheesing him off, I guess. None of this is really important to anything, but everyone eggs him on to try wearing it at the end, and that's pretty funny. Things start heating up again as the crackers stumble into a desolate, ruined space station, littered with mystery bone. This is where you can grab the black market pass, by the way, so don't forget that. After plunging into its depths, they encounter a horrifically mutated Tarmana, a typically docile, ape-like creature. After retrieving an audio recording from the wreckage, they play it back, hearing a child talk about their pet Tarmana, Taru, getting sick, being treated by a mysterious doctor riding a floating sheet, and turning strangely quiet and aggressive. Not long after, the crackers follow a distress call left ringing out for the past 3 days to the mechanized planet Phenomena, a planet entirely inhabited by cyborgs and robots. Upon arriving, they once again find the surroundings completely desolate and lifeless, aside from one lone biocomputer scientist, Jonah, locked behind a shutter. She reports that the biocomputer in Phenomena has been infected with a freaky mind control virus that sent its inhabitants berserk. She synthesized a vaccine to cure it, but the nature of the virus, which orders those infected to fight according to its commands, made the situation too dangerous for her to go in alone. Thankfully, there's no escort quest here. Jonah doesn't occupy physical space relative to us, but along the way she receives a mortal wound from stray gunfire that blasts off her arm, destroying the vaccine. Luckily, she reveals herself to be mechanical in nature as well, and urges the group to keep moving forward, saying she's got a spare vaccine on hand just in case something like this happened. Upon arriving at the control computer, that spare vaccine turns out to be Jonah herself. Once again, urging the group to plug her into the computer. With no other options, they do it. Jonah fully transforms, fusing with the mother computer and becoming one with it. According to Doran, that's it. She can never be disconnected from this computer again. Emilia erupts into tears, but Jonah tries to comfort her, saying it's like, totally cool, man. She's just been reborn into a new form of life. This is actually fine, and she likes it. Before we part, she mentions that with her new access to the mother computer's memory banks, she's able to access an audio record of the moment the virus was installed. It's fragmented, but the perpetrator turns out to be our previously mentioned scientist riding atop a floating sheet, named Magna, who raves about his plot to resurrect something called Viten. Not only is it the same guy behind both incidents, but he's got something particularly nasty this is all building up to, and whatever it is, it involves this Viten thing. Jonah offers them another vial of her vaccine, just in case, and Emilia accepts. I like this bit where Doran is like, looks like Jonah's become this planet's new queen. Yeah, man, she sure has. With the scale things are blowing up to, and the fact that it seems to involve resurrecting some piece of ancient history, the group follows the one clear lead they've got. There's only one planet that holds any knowledge of the previous civilization that inhabited these stars before us, and it's the planet Fox, Lisa's hometown, a planet that through its isolationist practices avoided getting wrapped up in the Great Galactic War. Technically, Lisa should be banished from here for breaking that vow of non-involvement, but she guides the group to the old woman who would tell her and the others these ancient stories, and upon meeting her and passing her 3 trials, she pretty readily gives up the goods. Oh, this password, that's really annoying, so if you have trouble with this one, here's the password right here. Use it however you will. Vaiten is most definitely a product of the ancient civilization, the agent of its destruction, in fact. It was created as an unstoppable weapon of war, but it was as uncontrollable as it was unstoppable. The Fox people inherited this place from those who created it, and knowing its story have chosen to live away from science and technology, to avoid causing another disaster of its scale. Vaiten's bad news. It was only barely sealed away into a little orb. Nobody knows exactly how to seal it back up if it gets out, and worst of all, the Union themselves came in and stole it, so we don't know its precise location. All we do know is that if Magna wakes it up, we're all a bit doomed. This Magna guy might think he's developed some way to control it, but he's probably wrong. Oh, and Amelia's brother also came by here to learn a bit more about all this stuff 2 years ago, so that's good news. With their leads dried up, the Crackers once again decide to take a rest and refuel, until they get called in by a local security force claiming they received a tip-off from the GG about them being responsible for the uproar at Phenomena. They ask them to call Phenomena directly to confirm that. They're like, well, we can't really get signal, so we can't do that. They're not immediately branded as criminals, but they're under lockdown until Log's memory has been brushed through to confirm any real evidence of criminal conduct. After a bit of thinking, the group realizes that whoever's responsible for this isn't going to just let Log stay there in one piece until their innocence can be proven, and after fighting through the station, manage to rescue their little robo-buddy just in time. Thankfully, I guess they didn't care about any security guys we shot up, because the guy in charge is more moved by our effort to preserve what would have, in his eyes, been most likely to prove our own guilt. He fixes up our little guy and notifies us that someone's planted a high-tech stealth listening device on him. The only person who would have had the opportunity to do that is Lapus. Quickly identifying the top suspect behind this little charade, the Crackers set off for GG headquarters to interrogate him face to face. Of course, the moment they arrive, Lapus abuses his powers to brand them as criminals rebelling against the Union, and they get thrown in a holding cell. Shortly after, the door to their cell mysteriously opens, mysteriously setting off an alarm the moment they set out, which they theorize to be Lapus's way of setting them up for a rightful execution for attempted jailbreak. Maybe kind of a stupid plan, because the gang immediately seizes the opportunity to hack their way out of the jail level, retrieve their weapons, and pursue him out to Borgon's secret fortress. At the newly uncovered depths of Borgon's fortress, they put together the dots and get him to fess up a little. As expected, shipping Borgon straight off to prison was an inside job. He wasn't being sent there as a criminal sentence. He was sent in to retrieve none other than Vaiten, the ancient superweapon that the Union, decided to put inside a maximum security prison, I guess? Lapus begs for his life, preferring being found out and sentenced as a criminal to getting the shit beaten out of him by Doron. But even as the gang decides to offer him that mercy, a mysterious shot rings out from behind us and kills the guy in one hit. As he dies, he cries out, "Lord Magna!" Maybe he should have considered his loyalties a bit better. Finally, we meet the Mad Dr. Magna. Sorta, "How very nice to meet you, Crackers. I am Magna, the greatest mind of the Giva army, and the destined ruler of this star system." Hiding in the shadows, he cackles about how he must make his exit, now that he's activated the fortress's self-destruct. They always have one of those, huh? As the Crackers try to make it out in time, Magna stalls their exit by forcing them into a battle with his ultimate creation, the L. Maybe you should name your ultimate weapon something else. At least name it the W or something, dude. You're just setting it up for failure. After narrowly escaping with their lives, the Crackers get a call from the GG. They're cleared of all charges, but they're also off the case. The Union considers it too big for a gang of mere crackers. Feeling dejected, Amelia stops at a nearby planet. Feeling dejected, Amelia stops at a nearby planet where she, alone and unarmed, is attacked by one of Magna's assassins. Before he can kill her, though, a mysterious man saves her. Yeah, Amelia doesn't take more than 2 seconds to piece together that it was her bro. And of course, as quickly as the GG took her off the case, it grew way out of their control. Borgon staged the ultimate prison riot on prison. If the GG can't handle it, then I guess this little gang of crackers are just gonna have to go in and apprehend them themselves. After fighting to the very depths of prison, they find the man himself, standing alone. Rather than taunting them or boasting about his success, he just seems kind of confused and doesn't know why we're here. He clarifies that awakening Viten isn't really his own goal at all. It was part of an agreement he made with Magna. No, all Borgon ever wanted to do was to free his fellow pirates and sail the stars together to find a new galaxy beyond this star system, a place they could really belong. As the gang properly warns him of just how dangerous Viten is, he goes quiet for a minute and then basically says, I think you guys should get out of here, like, right now, as fast as you can. It turns out activating Viten involved Borgon here ingesting the thing or something, and he's barely holding on to himself at this point. Heeding his advice, the Crackers dash back out to the Pink Dolphin, at which moment Borgon transforms into a 5-kilometer and growing space mecha meat creature. That escalated. The GG are, as usual, unable to deal with this threat, sending in their entire fleet to fire on it. All they receive is Viten's unstoppable defense, counterattacking with twice the force and wiping them out. The pirates attempt the same, with the same results. The Crackers evaluate the situation, Parrot noticing that there's a roughly 10-second gap they could exploit to break through Viten's shell and get inside of it. But to open that window up, they'd need to fire the Pink Dolphin's Dimension Cannon, and that wouldn't leave them enough energy to thrust their ship forward into its fleshy meat body in time. Luckily, we're not the only ones here with a Dimension Cannon. Kane finally announces his presence, laying out the plan. He'll fire the Shark's Cannon and create an opening for us. After that, it's Amelia's job to go in, wake Borgon's consciousness back up to assist in destroying Viten's core and save the day. Of course, doing this is basically suicide for him, and he immediately dies. Rip. We don't have time to mourn, though. We've got an ancient bioweapon to kill. Just have to get past this really obnoxious timed warp maze, that is. Like Kane said, Borgon's still in here, if just barely. Apologizing for causing all this trouble, he creates the opening Amelia needs to jam that vaccine right into the core, weakening it just enough for the Crackers to blast it down for the count, sealing it back up into its little GBJ ball. Of course, we've still got one man to settle some business with. Magna steals the core and flies away, declaring his plan to just revive Viten again somewhere else. So naturally, after clearing another teleport maze, the gang chases him down and completely and totally kicks his ass. You know, that didn't really look like a flying sheet to me. With the day finally, truly, and definitively saved, the gang rejoices, flies away in Pink Dolphin, and finds out that Kane is actually still totally alright, actually. He doesn't explain how. Guess he doesn't really need to. Determining that the Galactic Union doesn't really seem to have the best ideas of how to safeguard this unkillable bioweapon, everyone decides to say fuck you to them and fly off to the outer bounds of our solar system and beyond. Their trust in the system totally shaken, but their trust in each other fully affirmed. Finally, we hit our little ending text roll. The sealed-away Vaiten slowly rotted away, inevitably turning to nothing more than space dust. After sparing no expense to drag all its escaped inmates back inside, some people within the Galactic Union voiced their belief that this incident proves they should reconsider the harsh conditions of prison. But as of yet, prison reformations have yet to be seen, and the records of those 2 ships sailing off into the distant stars have all but disappeared. Yeah, that's pretty insane for the first PlayStation RPG ever made, huh? This game is awesome. This game is unimaginably awesome. I mean, it sucks. Playing it really sucks. It's not very fun to play at all. But it's also a full 3D dungeon crawling FPS RPG on console in 1994. It runs well. It feels responsive. It's probably, quite literally, the best game it could possibly have been considering the circumstances. Like, on a design level, Kingsfield 1 is probably better, more nuanced, more engaging. But Kingsfield 1 runs like Kingsfield 1. It looks like Kingsfield 1. If you needed a game to show off that the PS1 could run games that look like video games and kind of control and function like video games, I think Crime Crackers does pretty good. But more than that is the whole story. It's like prime 90s weird Japanese PC RPG stuff. Super high concept and imaginative and funny. The dialogue in this game is a genuine joy to read. It's just all so weird and bizarre in this very smooth and conversational way. It both presents a portrait of a pretty exciting and adventurous cartoon space sci-fi world, tells a pretty engaging story about very simple but understandable and likable characters who have tangible relationships and dynamics with each other, and goes places that are altogether just so much crazier than you'd ever expect from it based on the premise alone. Maybe I should just expect this much. These are the guys who'd end up giving us Wild Arms, after all, and those are, like, extremely cool. Just totally awesome. Some of the best RPGs ever made. But man, the fact that they started so many different histories right here, at this point, with a game like this, we really owe it all to Mediavision, man. They were truly underappreciated for how much they gave us. How much they continue to give us. These guys are still around. Why aren't they making more Crime Crackers? Crime Crackers should have been getting sequels all the way to the PS3. They should have had, like, PSP games for this thing, man. This is awesome. It's actually kind of sad something this important and this fascinating and imaginative got so left in the dust. It did get one sequel 3 years later in '97 when they had way more experience. I am gonna have to play that at some point. We'll come back to Mediavision someday. They've made and continue to make way too much weird and offbeat stuff not to. But for now, if you ever get the opportunity to play Crime Crackers, don't go in with the highest expectations. Go in knowing what you're in for. If you're okay with facing the game for both its strengths and weaknesses, and appreciating what it has to offer both for the game that it is and for what it represents historically, I have to say, it has some really, really neat stuff. It's a good-ass game.